Together, coming back into regular session, and my apologies, when we got to amendments to the agenda, I had neglected to bring onto this agenda the other discussion item that we had in regards to electronic attendance. So I'll ask if council is fine with it, we'll ask Mrs. Forsberg to take that item after she finishes her 2014 general fund budget preview and levy lid lift. Try and talk slowly till she gets back here. So, Jennifer, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. We wanted to bring forth some general fund budget preview, very, very high level at this point. We haven't started the budget process in any in-depth discussions, but we did want to share some of what our assumptions will be going forward as we do get ready to prepare the budget process. And then based on some information that we've received from the assessor's office, some levy lid lift opportunities. So what we're going to do first is we'll talk about the preliminary high-level budget information and then get into the review of the history of the lid lift, kind of the overview, which we already went over at the prior workshop, and then some available options. So as we get ready to prepare for the 2014 budget, if you'll remember back to the annual meeting, we had broached the idea of a budget committee. And so we just wanted to bring this information together for all of you to be able to participate in this high-level information. Basically, what we're planning to move forward with is a status quo budget, which would maintain the same level of service. We are focusing on some cost containment issues. We're looking at redesigning our benefit packages to save the city money, not only in 2014, but also moving forward with some of the options. We're anticipating no new initiatives. Again, this is still pretty early in the process, so that is subject to change. We're assuming that the council will ask for or approve in the property tax levy portion the 1% increase that would be available. That coupled with the overall increase in the assessed valuation of Washougal that we've received from the assessor. We're also anticipating the increase, even though we're still in discussions with the merger of the fire department with Camas. Based on our arrangement with them, it will move from the 35 cents per thousand to the 46 cents per thousand in 2015. So we've factored that into our long-term budget deficit numbers. So here's where we're starting. I realize this is kind of small. It looked bigger earlier on my computer. It won't let me just blow it up. But this is what we've seen before. It's basically with the programmed $594,000 deficit this year because we're using the use of reserves. We presented the balanced budget, but then we did those initiatives with the savings to the utilities and then the fee holiday. With 2014, we're looking at a deficit of $303,000, and then moving forward to an $885,000, basically $1.1 million in 16, $1.3 million in 17, and $1.5 million in 18. And again, all those assumptions that we discussed on the prior slide are built into this for 14 and moving forward. So some of the options for addressing the structural deficit that we've talked about a lot. The expense side options are the benefit costs. We know that one for sure. We've been working with benefit committee, and then we'll also work with the respective unions on some options that we can provide to decrease the cost of our overall benefit package. And then other cost adjustments, if necessary, would be discussed. We don't have anything in line at the moment, but we didn't want to not have a bullet up there to talk about potential savings as well on the expense side. Some things that have been floating around, if necessary, we could stop or slow the operational funding of the transportation and building funds, because currently those are factored into the budget. But if there's the council's desire, we could slow those down to change the expense side option. The slowing of the ER&R would be an option, and if those don't work, we would still have to come up with other ideas that would go into program cuts. With the revenue side options, we talked about some of those before at the prior workshop. We went into various different options that Washougal currently isn't utilizing. And the one that seemed to be open for discussion and that you asked for more information on was the levy lid lift, if available. So what we did is we contacted, we had a meeting with the assessor. They had their preliminary numbers earlier this year, and so we asked very nicely if they would give us some preliminary information, and they did. So everything that we're going to talk about here with the lid lift comes with the qualification that I like to say over and over: estimated, expected, estimate, all the above, so that should it not turn out this way, it is only an estimate at this point. But I have very strong assurances from the assessor that it should not be any lower. It could only be a better number. So that's very positive for Washougal. So if you'll remember, a regular levy lid lift is voter approved. It's just a majority to increase the levy rate up to the statutory max of $3.10. We are currently capped this year, so we haven't been able to have the opportunity. But again, as we discussed at the other workshop, we were very hopeful that in the near future we'd be able to have that opportunity again. It can be used for a specific purpose, or if used for a specific purpose, we have to track the funds separately. And it can be for any amount of time, including permanent. Unless it's for debt, then it's specific to a 9-year limit. So what have we done here in Washougal? I think my slides got messed up in the order, but, the property tax rate for historical purposes, our tax rate in '06 was 2.5. The voters approved the levy lid lift at that point. So you can see that the additional 10 cents was in play. We've made some little notes there. In '07, the lift started. In '08, AV, the assessed valuation went up, which contributed to our Fund 125 that we'll recap on here in a minute. And then, unfortunately, the AV started its downward movement, which brought us closer and closer to the cap, which we didn't get to collect toward the end of the levy lid lift time frame, the full amount of the lift, because we were capped. So as AV went up, we were able to pull in more money based on how, or it allotted to more than a dime, I guess is my point, in some of those '08, '09 timeframes, and then came down to nothing available. So kind of a complicated assessment, but our preliminary information from the assessor has given us a rate of 2.85 for 14. So that does allow for some room for another levy lid lift, is the point of this slide. Our estimated AV numbers for next year are approximately $1.29 billion, up from $1.17 billion, so it's about a 10% increase. Again, you'll see the word expected up there, which gets to us to that levy rate of 2.8564, to be precise. And that would, again, include the 1% increase. So it gives us an opportunity for a lid lift of about 24 cents per thousand. The history of the lid lift in Washougal in '06, the voters approved a 6-year, 10 cent per thousand lid lift. It was a 55.57% approval. Voter turnout wasn't the best. It was about 32%, but it was a pretty strong approval rate. It was a 6-year lift from '07 to 2012. And then I have a scale there for the amounts of money that was attributable to the lift per year. You can see that in '07, the lid lift as a percent of the total levy ranged from '07 to 12 between 15.8% to 3.35%. And again, that had to do with the fluctuating property values in AV and how that functionality worked out. And most of you will remember Fund 125 and how it started. The way the lid lifts used to work, they've since changed legislation, but the money couldn't supplant the purpose of the lid lift. So when we got approval for the lid lift in '06, fire expenses were at a certain dollar amount. So in preceding years, until expenses hit that amount, we weren't able to utilize the funds. So it created a supplanting issue, meaning that until, again, we spent that amount, we weren't able to utilize the funds. So we had to separate them out, which gave us Fund 125. And we've since been able to purchase the ambulance. We contributed to the EMS system in 11, so kind of all those things that we've already done. In 2012, we were able to wrap the year up without having to do a general fund transfer. So even though we spent more than the allotted funds in that year, the general fund was strong enough to where we didn't have to do the transfer, which has allowed the fund balance to continue to remain intact for future years. So this will be very helpful for 13 and 14, because we're no longer getting money in from the levy lid lift. So as you can see in 13, we've budgeted $385,000 out of this fund, and that's the difference between the '06 expenditures and the budgeted expenditures in fire, to true that up. And then in 14 is where we run into an issue of only having $255,000 remaining to transfer to the general fund, to support those services. So that's where being able to go out for a levy lid lift to build for future years will be very helpful. It's late. I'm just going to keep going unless you ask questions. Kind of a refresher for how we get to our property tax rate. It's derived by dividing the levy amount by the assessed valuation. So the rate per thousand equals the levy amount divided by the assessed value. So if you use the numbers from prior slides, it's 3.69 million divided by 1.29 billion to get us to that estimated rate per thousand. And we're going to go into some options here in a little bit. Since we've had the dime in the past, I have that as a starting point. We did a midpoint of 17.5 cents and then the full 24 cent, just to give you a perspective of how much revenue that would generate for the city and how much it would cost an average household. So for the 10 cents per thousand, it would generate approximately $129,000, which could be identified for fire and emergency medical services or other services. We would get, the annual cost to a $250,000 house would be $25.10, and that's on an annual basis. What would that do to our deficit, structural deficit? You can see it more easily in your packet or in your Dropbox, but it basically just makes the deficit a little bit smaller in current years. It doesn't fix the problem, obviously, because it's $129,000, but it does help alleviate some of the issue. So again, the midpoint is 17.5 cents per thousand. It would generate roughly $225,000, and the cost to the average household would be $43.85. I didn't do an 11-cent levy, which would be what we're looking for to support, to get from 35 cents to 46 cents. Just to keep it simple, we did the end, middle, and both the high end, And so that would just generate a little bit more and cost just pennies more, basically, than the 10-cent option. And again, you'll see that it pretty much takes away the deficit in 2014, takes it to about $70,000, and helps future years as well. But again, it doesn't fix the entire problem. So option 3, with the full amount that would be available with our preliminary numbers, is 24 cents per thousand. It would generate roughly $309,000, and the average cost to a household would be $60. And moving with the trend, it puts us to a positive status in 14 based on our high level numbers, and then helps in future years as well. And there are other revenue side options available. We just didn't get input from council as to researching those, but if you'd like more information on transportation benefit districts or some of those other revenue options, we can bring those forward at a later date as well. Again, we just brought this one forward with the good news from the assessor and the fact that the citizens have been supportive of it in the past, and council seemed to want more information on it should it be available. This is actually a year earlier. We were thinking we weren't going to be able to go out until 2014 for collection in 15. So I have some questions into the assessor, or excuse me, to the elections office on the cost now versus the cost in future years, since we have items on the ballot already. And obviously, the more you couple in one year is better than future years, but I haven't gotten exact numbers yet. We're playing phone tag, so I should have more information on that later. So the next steps and questions would be council determination regarding placing the levy lid lift on the ballot. And if that were the direction to go, we would have to pass a resolution before August 6th per the election timeframe.
Joyce?
Forgetting my question, is if we play, is it to the advantage to have it on a lower vote? Do we go, what kind of a threshold? Is it just a simple majority? Is it a 60%, or what is the?
It's a simple majority.
It's a simple majority, so it doesn't matter whether you have a low voter turnout or a higher voter turnout?
Correct.
Because the 2013 will be a very low turnout, and the 2014 will be, we assume that, a larger, because it's more people, more things are on the ballot. So that there is no difference in that. In the if it's just a 50. Am I
Correct.
making myself clear? I guess I'm getting bingy here late at night.
Yes, you're wondering whether this November compared to a future election, if there's any difference in what would have to happen in order to pass a levy. And the answer is it's a simple majority. There's no turnout requirement
Okay.
for this particular funding stream that's available to you.
Now, could that be a special election also?
Yes, it could.
Because the school levies are usually after the first of the year.
Right.
And Washougal will be going out for 2 levies in
I
February?
think they said February, right. They're not exactly sure exactly what they will be, but I think the board announced very, like last week or the week before, that they were going to try to renew their, they call it, we say O&M and they say M&O, their M&O, and I think a technology
Technology.
one as well. And the mayor and I met with the superintendent and the chair, and they reiterated that they would be doing that, and they were wondering what we were doing. And we said we weren't sure exactly, that heretofore we haven't had any options. Now we have some options. It would be nice to not compete, if that's the right term, with the school district on a ballot. Their M&O levy and their technology levy are very important in the community, and we don't want to get in the way of that. At the same time, our EMS levy lid lift has been important too to the community. So,
And okay, and then if we do the consolidation, does that mean that money goes to Camas?
it would depend upon the terms of an interlocal agreement that we would have with them. My sense is that, and again, there's no detail on that yet, but how we would pay for contracted services would be up to us. And it would be an amount that we would be sending, similar to probably what Battleground does. But yes, I think the underlying that would be if we ask the citizens for funds through a lid lift for emergency medical services, whether we consolidate or not, fully we are utilizing Camas for our EMS services, and that would be what we'd be doing into the future. And so even if we don't consolidate, they're at 46 cents, and East County and ourselves are at 35 cents through the end of 14. But beginning in 15, there's not a written understanding or expectation, but I think there's been an informal expectation that both entities would come up to that 46 for the EMS part, and that's been an assumption that Jen mentioned in the early part of the presentation that is in those projections. It's included that we would need to come up with that additional 11 cents, which is about $140,000 a year.
If it were on the ballot this November, then we would start collecting in 2014, right?
Correct.
January 1.
We were right out of the gate.
Short answer to your question is that there are still two different buckets of money. There's fire monies and there's EMS monies, and Camas still has to account for those separately. Even if we're combined or not, we still have a third partner out there, and all of those monies have got to true up and be used in the right ways. I don't know that we have looked at, although we have some evidence so far that we have saved dollars on, some dollars on overtime. Camas has saved more on overtime. Part of the 50 cents that we go out for, 25 cents, has been dedicated up to this point for the additional staffing at our firehouse that has nothing to do with Camas. It was done years ago in order to make sure that we pretty much always had at least two members of a fire crew to go out on a call. So that portion and how we're staffing now, I don't know that we've addressed that question, if that helps some of the burden of that quarter going away or not. My belief is no, because it's still the dollars are the dollars, and we're accounting for all of them somewhere in the fire service.
Right. We, in the long-term financial projections, or I guess those are midterm financial projections, all of those costs are on the expense line. So our fully loaded portfolio of general fund services is loaded in what we've showed tonight,
Projections.
including those services that are supported by the EMS levy of 50 cents. So our payment to Camas is included in this, and then what we keep from the EMS levy is included in this. We have a structural deficit that we've talked about the last couple of years. It has slowed down some because of some good news on some of the other revenue streams like sales tax and some of the other sources of revenue. But foundationally, Camas has the same problem. Other communities have the same problem. There's a structural deficit in the rate of growth of our expenditures for a status quo budget, making no changes, versus the rate of growth of revenues because of the 1% limit on property taxes. So the levy lid lift has been a tool that this community has used to maintain a certain level of service in fire and particularly EMS services. And the ultimate question for the council upon that expiration at the end of 12 is, do you want to ask the community to again support the level of service that we're getting there through this mechanism? It was a dime, excuse me, it was a dime for those 6 years. And at the time, as you know, property values and property tax revenues and all revenues, it was a very, very different landscape in 2006. It was almost the height of what folks have considered the boom around here. And then, as you saw in the numbers, things came crashing down. We're starting to come out of that, and that's very good news. That's why you see the rate needing to be higher in order to generate similar amounts of money. So that's why you see, an option to do 17.5, and it all goes to show that the structural deficit is a challenge that we're going to have to face, and we either have to make difficult expense side decisions here in the next couple of years, or difficult revenue side solutions, or some combination of the two. And we believe that was the message we heard from the council at the retreat, was that cost containment was first and foremost in your mind, and that's been the mayor's direction to us as well, and that you were open to potentially looking at revenue side solutions if you were confident that cost containment was the priority. So that's the direction that we've been taking. That's the message in the preliminary budget information. It's a cost containment strategy with this one revenue side option, since it's something the community has supported in the past. If the council decided not to put this in front of the voters this November for whatever reason, you would have the opportunity, I believe, to do it sometime in 2014. It would defer the revenue stream a little bit. We do have some of those Fund 125 monies available through part of 2014. It would just exacerbate the deficit, by those number of months where that revenue stream didn't come in. if the council chose not to pursue it at all this year or next year or any time in the foreseeable future, we will tackle the structural deficit problem that was on that initial slide and continue to look at cost containment, work with you on programs and what would be done there, unless there were other revenue side opportunities that you wanted us to explore. The time, this news is, and the timing to get on the November ballot, it's not ideal because the assessor has not been giving us any good news, and we really didn't believe we had this opportunity, so we really didn't spend much time. Things turned around more quickly than folks were expecting, and we just got this news here within the last month. So it puts a little time pressure on it, if you would, to have a resolution by August 6th if you wanted to ask the voters about this in November. We have time to do it, and we can provide more information if you have other, specific questions or want us to chase one particular aspect of it.
Okay.
So if we decide to do the lid lift, we have to choose what amount we're going to put on the ballot.
Correct. You have to specify a rate, and then you can specify a purpose.
Okay. Is there past history that indicates what kind of levels will pass?
In 2006, in that environment, the community was about 56% of those that voted, with a pretty low turnout, 34% turnout. It passed with 56% of the vote, and that was for a 10-cent lift. Now, at the time, if you went back to that slide, at the time, that lift, our rate was, because of the assessed valuation, our rate was, even with the lift, was at $2.67 per thousand, even with the lift. But because, and then the rate even went down because there was one more year of the boom. New construction and AV growth in that 2008 column, the rate went down, your levy went up, but the rate went down because assessed value was going up. And then it crashed, assessed value went down, and slowly, well, not that slowly, in 3 years, the crash brought us to the cap. And then we got truncated and we lost money. As you'll recall, this past year, your levy year over year was less than the prior year, and there was nothing that could be done about that, even if you had wanted to. So it's going to take a while to cycle back for the same portfolio of services. Nothing has changed dramatically in the portfolio of services. It's going to take a while to cycle back to tax rates that look more like the 06, 7, and 8 numbers, even with a lift. So it's hard to say what would be supported. I think EMS services are important in the community, and the message back from 06 is basically the same message now. It's maintaining the current level of service that we have through our partnership with Camas and the ambulance in Washougal.
Questions, comments, thoughts?
Just got a letter from Chief Swinhart today, was forwarded. I appreciate you sharing that with us. His view of how the ambulance served us. It seems that those are the kind of things, if we choose to do this and we decide how much to do it for, to ask the people, that's the kind of education needs to go out there. Nice and loud, that ambulance is serving our community very well. And we certainly don't want to have less service, and we would like to continue to improve. So that was pretty good timing for that letter. I don't know if you planned that or not, but
No, that came out of rumor
yeah,
control, basically.
rumor control.
Rumor control, so.
So that's good. We got to control rumors and we got to have truth. So I sent a question back to the chief asking of those times that the ambulance was out of town serving the community,
For secondary calls.
were there other calls here locally, and did someone else have to respond? Because they're not going to stop what they were doing, obviously, to come back home. And I haven't got to check my email. I don't know if there's any answer to that. But I did reply all. Did he reply?
He did, he sent a response, and he had an estimate of how often that might happen. I'd have to pull the email up.
Well, so it did happen?
Can happen. He didn't see it as a predominant scenario.
Rod's very seldom, I would think. Just a numbers thing, and I can't imagine it would happen often. Well, that was good news. So education is always the key when you want to do something like this. 'Cause nobody wants to raise taxes, I know that.
Any other comments, directions from council? Are we don't want to assume you want to go towards replacement of that levy and to put it back in place, so we're kind of looking of direction of, do we start moving that direction? Do we-
Yeah, my first feeling is let's move forward with it. Like Karen's question was, how high is appropriate
Yeah, and we're,
coming
well,
out of a recession, you know?
while Jennifer has provided numbers that go up to the 24 cents, if that's what the max is we can get to, I don't think you have a recommendation from the administration at this point to go to that number. I think that hopefully was just for comparative
That's right.
purposes and what it can do.
We bookended the dime that it was there before, and we bookended the highest that you could do, and then one right in the middle
Yeah,
for
but
illustrative purposes.
What we have talked about is potentially trying to settle on a number, if council is willing to consider it, that would replace that dime with whatever today's number is that would go towards those exact same uses it was before, not to make it a general levy lid lift that would go to anything else. Our ones prior to this have been specific to fire service and EMS.
And to retain
services
current
specifically.
services,
Correct.
not to
And
lose.
Not to, I'm gonna say not to collect any more than we need to. That said, you know, it would be, to some degree, a wonderful thing if the economy turned around so much and our
yeah.
assessed valuations turned around so much that we go out for that lid lift again, and all of a sudden we've got a year when our assessed valuation goes up so much more that even our dime or 11 cents or 12 cents is 15 or 20 cents. That's something that we can't control. It's just a function of what happens to those values. But our intent would be not to go out for any more than what we would need.
Remain conservative in this, coming out of this recession, that's what we have to do.
If you were to consider it for a replacement levy, we would look at it literally as a replacement levy. It just helps fund that service that
That's where we have to
we have
start.
and what has gone away.
When will we have more definite information from the assessor's office?
Well, it's not for a couple more months.
Yeah, so I asked the question, kind of a reverse question to your question of what happens if those numbers aren't correct and we went out for a number that wasn't available and we would be capped at that amount. So for instance, if a 21-cent levy lid lift was approved and approved by the voters, but then the assessed valuation came in under that to where it wasn't available, it would be capped at what was available.
Automatically.
Correct.
Would be adjusted,
Yeah,
yeah.
you still can't collect any more than that 310.
Correct.
so.
No, that's good.
But typically, we don't get the actual final numbers until, end of November, beginning of
Oh, right,
December.
okay, yeah.
We have been promised that they will be earlier, but part of it's dependent upon state agencies for their utility information, and that's what the holdup was, according to the assessor last year. So it's kind of a wait and see at this point. The property valuations just got mailed to all the property owners in the area, so now the appeal process can start. And the new construction numbers, I believe, go through the end of August before being added on. So there's still a few unknowns. They were pretty confident in the number not going any lower than what they've provided us. And then we did kind of an average for the state numbers to get to our estimate numbers here. So even using the lowest number from the state in past history is still roughly the same number of the 2.85. So we're pretty confident in the estimate, but it's just dependent upon all the final numbers and where they lay out.
If I could offer just one other sort of calculus to this. As you know, we have the 50-cent EMS levy, which is a separate levy from this, and our general levy. And 25 cents of that historically has gone to the EMS partnership. So that's a quarter. To get the level of service that we're currently enjoying back in 06-07, we needed to come up with another dime, so the lid lift was the vehicle chosen, and the voters supported that. So we were at 35 cents, which is where we're currently at. Camas moved, and their voters supported a move from 35 to 46. And as I mentioned, an informal expectation around that, but there's other variables at play. But just for discussion, we lost the dime because it expired, and then they added 11 more cents. Now, I'm not saying that we have to come up with 21 cents and therefore we should do a 21-cent lid lift, but somehow the overall combination of cost containment, revenue from other sources, all sources, and potentially these sources have to make up for, I think ultimately by 2015 as a starter, we got to find that 21 cents. It doesn't have to come from a lid lift. And so we believe that some of that has already been achieved through some of our cost containment, and we are hopeful that there'll be some cost containment as a result of benefit redesign that we've talked about a little bit, and I can't go into details in this meeting for that. But I would think as a minimum, just to throw out as sort of a informal recommendation, that difference between 35 and 46 is 11 cents. You might think of 11 cents as a floor to your consideration, and then potentially think about anything beyond that to try to help the situation as much as could be helped, but what's reasonable policy for the community? I mean, it's a difficult thing to ask the community just coming out of this, so maybe that 11 cents is palatable and it's rational because there's sort of a basis for it. Of course, doing a dime again, it's very rational, and it could be very easily discussed in terms of a replacement. And I think it would be very easy to understand, for all of us to understand that. I think the 11 would be as well.
Is there an EMS levy on the ballot after the first of the year? Do we have that?
No, not
No.
till 15.
It passed in 10, so 11, 12,
6 years.
14, 15, 16. It expires at the end of 16,
Oh, okay.
if
So
we did
we're-
that correctly.
So we would be going out in 16 for
Yeah,
starting in
okay.
17.
Right.
So we're not into
I
that.
used to just
No.
Yeah. And another thing to think about as well, and we've talked about this, depending upon what happens with our partnership around fire and EMS services, no matter what happens with that, if we're going to have any partnership on the EMS side, it's not untenable, but it's a little difficult to be on different cycles between the different communities where ECFR and its voters are on a cycle, Camas and its voters are on a cycle, and then we're on a cycle. And we have 2 cycles because because our AV is not as high as Camas's, we have to use an EMS levy and a lid lift to get the same level of service. So it might be prudent at some point to talk about timing how long these things would go so that we could get those to be lined up if we're going to have a partnership that extends beyond, a couple of years. This can be permanent. A lid lift can be permanent
As long as it's not debt.
as long as it's not debt. So if the idea is, the financial structure of our community, which is unique, if it takes, it's because of that financial structure, if it takes a lid lift to deliver the level of service that the community is expecting from us and is supportive of, then a permanent lift might be in order. That's a more difficult conversation, I think, than something that's got some, a time limit to it.
So
So
we don't know the time limit on this one. Is that part of the discussion, or is it 6 years, or is that why you were counting?
it's up to the council.
We get to choose that too.
I want some more information. Probably, I'm just not ready to make a decision on this yet. But as to size, when to do it, I think we probably will have to do it at some point. But I'm not sure that I can decide that in the next month.
And I totally agree that we don't want to do it during the school district's need.
That'd be early 14.
I believe they're looking at February. What we could do is go back and look at, I always think I know all of those dates. For
There's
the
May,
special
there's some in May and all that.
There's other ones.
I don't, and I think I've said before, I really don't like doing it outside of November. I just, that's been an when I was a private citizen, that was one of the things that always irritated me, is when the public agency comes out with a tax in a low turnout election. Like 2006, when this was adopted, that 32% turnout is not the November election. I can tell you that. When was it? November? They don't have a 32% turnout in November. I
Well, the
don't.
presidential was in '08.
I know, but in
It was an off year.
in '06, it's an off year. They had, legislative races and all that.
People are asleep.
We had the ballot results from the assessor. Jen's just trying to pull that up. We had what election it was. We just can't remember.
Okay, that is not important, but I'm just skeptical about any time other than November.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see it November.
November 13 or November 14?
Depending how fast.
You don't mean Friday,
This week.
oh, yeah, 2013.
Depends.
Would you like us to refine some information around, in a little more detail about what would happen with nothing
Right.
on the ballot in 13, and talk a little bit more about that deficit amount and what the implications could be, and then what a modest, more replacement feeling levy might do, and what that would do.
And delaying it a year, I'd like to see.
And delaying it a year,
Yeah.
yes.
And where could we cut? I know you talked about that a little bit ago.
Yeah, depending
Where else
upon-
can we cut?
Depending upon the amount of deficit that's projected, as you know, the budget is estimates. It's based on revenue estimates, not exact numbers. So if we're looking at a $300,000 deficit for 2014, we believe that we will achieve some savings in benefit redesign. How much exactly is a variable. I believe that we could maintain current levels of service and balance the budget by slowing down some of the investment in the future that the council has been making recently, and taking a break from that for a year to further consider a lid lift or what the other opportunities would be, and consider that in 2014. Examples of that, just to give you quick examples, we're $30,000 a year goes into the Transportation Capital Fund, and we're just saving that for opportunities for grants. You could bypass that opportunity. It's not a great thing. It's not ideal, but it could be done to maintain current levels of service. We do the same thing in the Building Capital Fund, $30,000. We could take a look at our equipment repair and replacement plan, and although we've got a depreciation schedule for all of our assets, we could try to eke out another year on some of those assets, and that would help us a little bit.
Can that be part of the report?
And we could talk about that, come back in short order with that. Those are the types of things that we would do. And then hopefully the combination of benefit reform, those little reductions, one-time type things, would get us a balanced budget. So there could be further consideration in 14 perhaps of a lid lift. If that's the way the council wanted to go, I think we could probably make that work.
When do you think that'll be resolved?
The benefit redesign, not soon. That's a function of
months, you
labor
mean, or-
negotiations.
Into 3 labor negotiations that are wide open right now.
Yeah, it's
So we may not know that.
down the road.
We would be very hopeful that we could reach agreement with all of the units before the end of the year, if not well before the end of the year. But that's not a unilateral decision of the city. It's a partnership with the bargaining units. So those variables will continue to be at play. Even if we can't achieve the level of savings we would like from benefits reform, we will have a balanced budget, and we would have discussions about what it do. We have to. So we would have discussions. I think it's the out years where if it's going to be an expense side solution to the structural deficit, that's where the conversations that we began, where we were talking about discretionary programs, essential programs, and mandatory programs, where would the council really have discretion? There are only a few areas where you really actually would have some discretion because of mandates that we have in a number of our programs. We would dig back into those conversations and get prioritization and direction from the council on expense reductions along those lines. So we will bring back some refined information, looking at weighting and looking at a replacement feeling levy this November, and try to do that. Well, we'll have to do that for the next meeting on July 8th, so that if there was direction to do something, we would have a resolution for you on July 22nd. You could always do a special meeting if you wanted to do that, but it is pretty tight. There's 2 more meetings before that deadline after today. So we'll make some time for that on the 8th.
Okay. Any other comments, thoughts in regards to lid lift and?
I have one more question. Can you raise it, like, say we raised it 11 cents, say 11 cents got approved this fall, could we raise it 10 more cents?
Go back to the voters?
Yeah, I mean, could we, in another 2 years?
Lift on the lift, I believe that you're not limited to one
Like,
choice.
until we get up to the cap, or?
And I believe that you have the ability to incrementally do that, absolutely. So that's a possible approach to take too.
It was done in the primary in 2006.
August.
September.
September.
I only have page 11 and 12, so there was 12 pages worth of stuff.
Okay, anything else on the finance side of that? Okay, electronic attendance. It worked until we lost him.
And that was not due to our side.
And I think it was fine. I could hear him well.
Frankly, I was amazed it worked.
Yeah.
I was.
I was sorry we couldn't see him. but-
See who?
I could see him,
Oh,
Yeah,
except for when you do it with FaceTime, get a little light shine on your little head there, because he was in the dark, even though we could see him, he was very dark and in the shadows. And then he'd lean over to talk in the mic, and then just see his shoulder, so,
Being on the 8th, do I need to bring like a headlight?
yeah. No, I mean,
gotta
like,
do it
you know,
The other way?
a light shining on you.
Jackson stand and shine it on me.
You always wanted to be a movie star. I'm going to be gone on the 8th also, coming home from India.
so, David, you've got, or Jennifer, we've got some draft language here for consideration that came from multiple places?
Yes, it's in the packet.
Really?
This gets very formal.
The workshop packet,
Oh, the workshop, yeah, that's right. It was the workshop.
and then,
What's the reason for the formality, or the closing and the opening of this?
that was the recommended, I went to MRSC and there was about 6 options, or 6 different examples, and that was the majority of the examples had that included. So I don't know if one city started it and then they all thought it was best practice.
But it's to clearly delineate when you have someone in that's, what do you call this?
Participating remotely.
When you have someone participating remotely and for which parts of the meeting and which parts they are not, and/or you literally, it appears from this, terminate the connection period.
So the minutes would reflect this?
Correct.
Minutes would reflect it, and hopefully both the written notes and if everything is working correctly, our audio and visual, well, the audio at least would have it in there.
Right.
Does this, so when you had Paul by FaceTime, does that show up on Rose's system at all?
It can. We have lots of options about what on the recording. We have options about what we show up on the screen. We felt it was more important for the council and our neighbors that were here to have the presentations and the
No.
maps up on the monitors.
No, agreed. I just didn't know if somehow that tied into, do we just have an audio of Paul there, or do we have video of him there as well on?
He-
He's on the recording, so when
Okay.
he was actually speaking, I zoomed in the camera on him, and so you could see the computer monitor.
It works very well. The other thing that we're able to do is it's just by phone. So if you were participating by phone, I just had my cell phone here. We practiced with Paul. We put it right by the mic up at the dais and out in the audience. You could hear it very clearly. And what these proposed rules do is they set a performance standard, and the performance standard is that the counselor participating remotely needs to be clearly heard, and that the rest of the council, and really the whole room, needs to be able to clearly hear the person that's participating remotely. I think we demonstrated that the technology is very viable for that, and it can work. Something happened on his end, and we lost him for a little bit, and so that could happen. It doesn't have to be video. We tried that. It could just be audio. There are two key provisions here that I think are worth discussing. The rest is the details, just saying what I just said. But the first one there is right after, it's in 1.1.1, and again, this is in your work session packet. There is a limit on how often you can do that unless the council basically suspends the rules and by majority vote says you can do it longer. The idea behind that is that this isn't to be a regular practice, that it's, you know, it's for those circumstances where really somebody needs to participate remotely. And it says 3 times. There's no magic to that number, but that was what we saw in other examples. So it's just put out for your consideration. There's a 24-hour notice requirement. That was in most of the examples as well. I think we're able to probably have a little less notice than that. You know, if something came up, you got really sick, and, you know, it wasn't wise for you to be here, but you could participate. So I think there's probably some flexibility on that. The rest is pretty straightforward.
Yes, did we decide as a council whether the remote participation would be considered present for a roll call for a meeting or not?
I believe if you're going to allow folks to vote remotely, they would be, I don't know that present is the right term, present by,
It wouldn't be an
Sadly.
absence. You wouldn't need to excuse them.
Okay, so, but
It
they
would
wouldn't have
count.
to be excused from the meeting. They would be considered in
It would be
attendance
considered in attendance, correct,
via remote.
whatever.
participation,
just not
correct.
present- Just not present in the room, and that's
Right.
what all of this is getting to, is making sure that,
So can they vote then?
Yes.
well, it's up to you.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
that's the discussion. Well, I would like
Be a roll
to,
call automatically then at that point?
No, I think these, I think, actually get into the announcements that a council member is now attending, council member is now concluded.
Talking about for a vote, though.
When the vote is taken,
Right.
would there be an automatic recall, or not recall, but, sorry, but it's late.
Automatic
who do you
roll
want
call.
to recall?
To make sure, you know, you could make that part of your rules if the technology makes the vote discernible. We should be okay. You know, we didn't
Just
get,
like yours today, for the most part. I mean, if we couldn't tell, or if there was any question, or you wanted
Yeah.
to force the actual individual vote, you can certainly call for that.
right.
I agree.
Can't you?
I would like to strike and not use the words that say 3 times a year. I mean, we all know that we're committed to this process. Now, I'm looking at my own life this summer. This is very rare. I'm going to India. How often do you go to India? My son is graduating from boot camp, and I haven't looked at the calendar. Oh, we're going to be home on a Monday, so that won't fall into place, but it could have, because his graduation's on a Friday. Could have been a different day of the week. And then my first grandchild's being born, and they're probably going to live in Florida. And so I think, you know, I could hit that 3 in a matter of 3 months, which would never happen again in my whole life, back to back. So that makes me nervous that that would be the case.
I think one of the things that you need to keep in mind as well, though, is there are meetings that you probably want to be a part of. There are likely meetings that,
Don't
if I'm not, I'm not.
affect you, yeah,
And
sure.
there's that factor.
That's true, but if you have the 3 times, and then you're gonna have to have it waived, or what is that word,
Suspended.
suspended, I just don't think we'd be abusive of it. I would rather not have it in there than have to have it suspended. And if I chose that, if I saw, oh, it's a simple agenda, it's not anything I have to do, I could do that by choice. If it's a hot topic, and then maybe I'm on the opposite side of some people's fence, and then they don't want to suspend it. You know what I'm saying? It's a political thing then.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not uncommon in politics.
Hopefully it is uncommon here.
It has been so far since we've been around. It's been good.
As a former technology manager and recognizing the current state of technology, I think it's very important to get this stuff in the minutes. Because recently I've tried to get minutes of meetings around the local area and discovered that the minutes were lost because this failed or that failed. I would rather that Washougal wasn't the one saying that. So if we have it in the minutes, then it's golden.
Other thoughts? Thoughts about 3 times, no times, 28 times, once a month? You all get to craft this, so, Dave?
How about not putting a time requirement or a number of times requirement into it? If it gets to be an abusive issue, we can
Address
call
it.
each other on it. We can address the issue with a rule. But as I look at my colleagues on the council, I don't see anybody that's going to abuse it. And if they do, I know that people are going to call them on it.
And life happens.
Yeah.
This is a big-
Grandbabies happen.
That's right, I'm in favor of just eliminating the whole frequency paragraph.
Good.
That just doesn't,
Thank you.
I agree.
Is motion in order? I would move.
I don't think we anticipated bringing this
Oh.
forward in final.
No?
Oh,
action.
okay.
Right, so we
It's
will,
not on the agenda.
Oh,
do so that we can facilitate some remote participation formally at the next meeting. We will, we'll have a resolution, and we wanted to make sure that you were supportive of doing this to the test. We've got that support now, so we will prepare a resolution for your consideration. It'll be on your agenda. That's the first item of business on July 8th, and then talk to Dawn, and immediately, we'll make it effective immediately. So immediately upon passage of the resolution, remote participators would be eligible to fully participate in the meeting, in voting and everything. And it sounds like we might have 2 council members who will be doing that on the 8th.
Okay. Oh, joy. Dave?
The double, huh? I just wanted to thank the administration and the staff for their work on this. You've come up in short order with something that I thought would take a while. Thank you.
that's good, thank you.
You had some staff that were smart in how they set this system up. I believed it was still the room, and that there's just some curse of being able to do things with computers in this room, but evidently it seemed to work this evening. So do we know if we can do 2 at a time?
Yeah, because one's going to have to be able to hear the other one, too.
Well,
This is a new dynamic now.
Paul was hearing us through the speakers in the room. So the microphone on the iPad sitting at his place was
Let's-
good enough to work.
Let's do this. The test that you did earlier today, you've got a couple weeks to figure out how to do that with a couple folks remotely and whatever, and
I'll be coming off of a 36-hour plane trip from start to finish. I could sleep through that meeting with no complaints. Just don't do anything of really big importance.
Okay, any other items on electronic attendance?
I think it's great.
Awesome.
We are at that point for any final comments from folks from the public.
Hey, Joe's here. Dawn, you need to do a report on, you need to do a story on us. It's not too late. We are.
Looks like you're running short of money here. I've been here for over 10 years now. I see opportunities. I saw them then, I see them now. They're looking for money. You guys give $50,000 to Camas Washoe Lake Economic Development Agency. I talked to the other rooms, I apologize. I needed some help with what I was doing. I showed you at a workshop, I think I showed you this earlier. I've got a program that can save billions of dollars. And I needed somebody to formalize it. So I asked him to do it, and we didn't do it. But before he said no, he had to ask the committee, and the committee said no. Now, who's on that committee? The Port of Camas Washoe, the City of Camas, the City of Washoe. Port of Camas Washoe turned down $472 million to come into this community in a 4-year period. That'd be about $2 million a year coming in here. You guys could use this kind of money. That's only one project. A lot of good things could happen. Then I asked Paul if you could make a program for me. He says, you'd have to ask the committee. And the committee said no. And I asked him to give me a letter to see, can you give me a reason why you're saying no? He said he would, he said no, he said, I asked him for a letter in writing. I asked him 4 times, never got it. Anyhow, these guys are getting $200,000 a year. What these guys, I've been going to their meetings incidentally. Very few people go to those meetings. What these guys are doing over there is the same thing that every free enterprise guy is doing out there in business. He's out there looking for money, trying to figure out what things go, and a new business opens up and it goes in the paper and everything else. This happens, this is free enterprise, there's opportunities out there. Anyhow, here's the deal that I made to Paul. I told him, I told him about this program that I have. Now, this was before it was formalized. It's called the All-American Financial Aid Relief Program. A lot of thinking has gone into this. It's based on the foreclosure. It's the solution to the foreclosure problem. But it's also a solution to the underwater mortgages, senior housing, reverse mortgages, student housing. It can resolve all those problems. Nobody's ever told me it can't work. I had two law firms tell me it's okay, it's legal. I've had a title company told me it's legal. Now, to get it approved, I got it, just like over here now, how much trouble did I go through to get this thing approved on my phone, units that I wanted to build. Now, what I wanted to build is to satisfy a need. That's how you make your money. It's a supply, it's demand, it's a need. What you people are listening to here almost every time you have a meeting is what people want. What do people need? You got just 500 kids that just graduated from school here. Where are they gonna live? They don't even have affordable housing. You got the Vancouver Housing Authority out there that can't even build 3,000 homes right now, and that's their shortage right now, because they don't have the government financing to do it. I can show them how to do that. The homes that I was gonna build on the Port of Camas Washoe on the water, identical to the Camas Ridge, very similar to that. I could have sold that for $1,500 down getting out of high school. The payments would have been $750 a month, 6% interest, 30-year financing, no government subsidies. Now, that's what you call saving money.
Joe, I need you to wrap up.
Okay. Anyhow, now they built Camas Ridge. It's $1,130 for the same unit that I was gonna charge $750. For $750 a month, they own it. For $1,130, they're still renting. And that's not affordable housing, because all the other units in the area are selling for, renting for $400 to $500 less than that. So that's not affordable housing, so there's millions of dollars being wasted out here. Somebody ought to focus on that as well as supply the demand of what's going on. Now, the people that need are not here tonight. The people that want to hear. Now, what about the, these guys who want, they never show up at these meetings. They don't have a need. I mean, they have a need, they know you can't help them. But that's what made this country, supply and demand. Anyhow, what I did with this thing so far, I've got a letter, I took this to Congressman Rivera, that made a presentation of this. They liked what they saw. They said that if I could get community involvement in what I was doing, that it would make it easier for her to get a lobbying thing in Washington, D.C. So far, I've got a letter from the Clark County Commissioners, the Vancouver City Council, the Vancouver Chamber of Commerce, the Camas School District, and the City of Camas. And I'm asking you guys to give me a letter too. You don't have to if you don't want to, I don't care. You can probably tick it off at me right now. But anyhow, I'm not looking for an endorsement, I'm not looking to be a sponsor, I'm not looking for a recommendation. Just have her look into that, if it makes sense, have her go ahead with it. And that's all I'm asking. Because once they look at that, because the program that I've got right now is better than anything the government's come up with so far. That's that study I showed you earlier tonight.
Joe, I need you to wrap up. I
All
really
right,
do.
okay, I'm all over. Anyhow, how do you sell God in 30 seconds? You're born, you live, you die, you keep on living.
Thank
Two biggest secrets? Two biggest secrets? I like to use this. I use this in the nursing home. Be ready to go when you go, and know where you're going before you leave. It's good stuff.
Grab your book there,
Thank you, Joe.
You what?
Your book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the guy that did that has an MBA. He's also got a degree in real estate and finance. And he knows how it works. Thank you.
You bet, Joe. Everybody's shaking their head no. Okay. Mayor's report, I've got a couple of items for you. First one is just a reminder of our town hall meeting this Saturday here at City Hall from 9 a.m. until noon. We've got on there discussion points of tourism and events, and then also a secondary one for change of government. Dave, anything that you want to add on those as far as folks on the tourism side that you've got coming?
Don't have a final list. We invited a number of folks that would be involved in tourism and event promotion in the community, the Chamber, Camas Downtown Association, Adam, working with Wes, Pendleton, Steigerwald, Trails to Gorge, I think is how they say that, Washougal Lions, and some of those folks are available to come or are sending representatives, so that's encouraging. And just have told them that it's a discussion to try to generate some grassroots effort around what might our next steps be and what role would the city have, if any, in promoting tourism and events, and that we're appreciative that they'd come. Very brief staff presentation at the beginning of that, but it's primarily to hear from the community.
I just had a thought. Did you talk to, or should somebody talk to the people over at the Best Western? Who stays there? What are they coming in for? I don't know that they would know what everybody's there for, but they might have some ideas about why people are staying there.
We could talk to the manager. I failed to mention that we invited everyone that's on the Lodging Tax Advisory
okay.
Committee, so the owner there.
Thank you.
I haven't heard back from them. I did invite several folks involved with the motocross. I haven't heard from them either.
Okay.
So getting a mixed response to it, but I will follow up on that. I'll try to maybe talk to the manager. Maybe I can get a hold of that person more readily and see if they have any data on that.
Okay, Joe?
It's not an official meeting, I don't need to be excused from it.
Correct.
Yeah. Did you invite all of the downtown merchants?
I did not invite all of the downtown merchants, but I will.
Will there be any sort of, just a notice given to them?
I will.
I was approached by several downtown merchants regarding the last meeting we had with Mr. Hickey and Mr. Bishop, and that they were not informed. So, and they would have liked to have been in attendance.
Yeah.
If you've got specific ones, certainly let Dave know,
Yeah,
'cause
Bill and Don Lavin,
they
True
were-
Value Hardware.
Okay.
Bill told me specifically he was not, he didn't even know about the meeting.
Yeah, it was hand-delivered, literally hand-delivered
Yeah, we
to
wa-
every business from the police station to 32nd.
But I don't know who we handed it to at
And-
True Value.
Or what it went, where it went
Right.
to at that point.
Right,
Yeah,
Okay,
we literally hand-delivered.
right.
okay.
But we can do that again.
Okay, great. Did we get the names of any of the people that were in attendance that day out in the audience? There were several business owners, very, very interested in a potential Downtown Merchants Association or
we
something
have.
like that.
We have, Rose, we have
Those that signed up.
attendance list from the last town hall. Well, it wasn't a town hall, but it was kind of like a town hall, right? She's saying yes, that we do.
You have something? Okay, I just want to make sure it's thoroughly advertised, so, as a topic, because I think there's a lot of people interested in it, I really do. I know, it's time to go.
Okay, thank you. I will enhance the invites.
Thanks.
Second item that I have for you, we had a C-Tran composition board meeting on the 11th of June. Met for a 30-minute period just to get the ground rules and meeting schedule put together. The next meeting of that is July 9th at 4:30 at the main library in downtown Vancouver. Those meetings are scheduled at an hour basis prior to the actual C-Tran board meeting, so many of those board members are also there listening in. No decisions made other than the meeting schedule at this last one. I would imagine at this one is when some of the proposals will start coming out in more form from the members of that board. We did have one that was kind of put forward that is out there from at least one of the county commissioners that potentially could add some seats for some of the smaller communities, but at the expense of some of the bigger communities having some of those go away. And after that, I think there were some communications going around from the city of Vancouver that they weren't real happy with that and may look at other options that they may have available to them as well.
I
So,
heard something about that.
yeah. So we'll see where all that plays out. But, and I believe the meetings, at least that one, was televised live by CVTV, so you could always view in on that, that process as well. Other than that, the only other item, you're both going up to Kennewick tomorrow? You're welcome to ride along. I think we're leaving town at 11:30, so
I think
if you want,
Joyce is
there's
going to
room.
drive and
We're going to shop our way up.
carpool and
Up to
take a little
Portage.
extra time, leave it a little early in the day.
Okay,
There's a winery or two we may want to stop
not
at.
asking. That's.
I'm
so-
not telling.
So your first scheduled item is at 4 PM tomorrow afternoon?
We'll be there.
4 PM. Well,
We'll-
you don't have to be,
it's-
there's no attendance, so.
Yeah, that's when the
We'll be-
registration opens though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's 9 AM. No, 4 o'clock is the only scheduled item for tomorrow,
And what is it? Yeah.
4 to 6.
Oh,
Oh, is it
okay.
4 to 6?
We'll be there.
We'll be there. Really,
Uh,
11, it's pretty early.
Council items, Brent?
The only thing I'd like to, I noticed we're going to have two council members gone in 2 weeks at our next meeting. I wonder if we could defer the decision on the governance matter to the meeting following that and still make the November ballot to the 22nd.
The only action required by the council, if the council chooses to do something, is to pass a resolution to put it on the ballot. We have the town hall this Saturday, and I was anticipating probably getting some direction subsequent to that, or
And I don't think we're ready to give direction anyway, so I wonder if we could the rest of the council be amenable to deferring it to the 22nd.
Are you talking about calling for a vote?
Yeah, to put to pass the resolution.
Basically introducing a resolution
Yeah, and passing it,
versus the 8th?
or not passing it.
You want to consider the 22nd?
Yeah, rather than the 8th, yeah. Because I'm not ready to, I wouldn't be ready to vote for it on the 8th.
have it in workshop on the 8th, but then not,
We've had our workship on it already, so.
didn't know if there needed to be any more.
Okay, is this time when we give direction to have it? As a resolution item coming before the council on the 8th? Because we haven't had our town hall yet
Right.
either.
Town hall is this Saturday. Whatever direction ultimately give to the staff, work with the city attorney, and we would get the appropriate resolution prepared if that's the direction that we receive, so that you could consider it and vote on it. So if on the 22nd you wanted to consider a resolution, we would need to know before then, so that we could have it ready for the 22nd. So the only other time scheduled would be the 8th to give us that direction. I don't think you have to vote to ask your staff to bring a proposed resolution, but we would need some kind of an indication that it's the direction that you wanted to head. That could be provided Saturday.
Who will be attending on Saturday, can I ask?
I will be here.
I'll be there. Will you be there on Saturday?
Oh, wouldn't miss it for the world.
Awesome.
I think Paul will be there.
Yeah, I
Connie.
think Paul will be there.
Yeah, so Connie Jo will be the only one.
Connie Jo's the only
Connie Jo
one
will be
that's going to be missing.
I don't. need
I'm-
her. Why?
As I understand, if we vote on it on the 8th, then if it passes the council, then you write the resolution, or do we vote on the resolution?
You need to vote on the resolution.
Right.
On the 8th, we just have to give them a heads up that they need to prepare a resolution.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's the heads up on the 8th, then you have the resolution. Then, do we vote on the resolution again?
It's just a resolution to put it on the ballot, is that correct?
What you
Yeah.
could do is vote to have a resolution brought back at the following meeting, if you were so inclined to have it. It wouldn't be binding, but then the resolution could be brought back on the 22nd and be presented for formal adoption to give to the elections board.
Well, it's cutting it, the 22nd is cutting it really close, though.
I would think if
I
we
would think
vote-
the 8th.
I think we should vote on the 8th. And
Correct.
then,
And I should be able to connect. I won't be
Yeah.
for 36 hours.
Why is it only 5?
No, I think it's great that we have 2 council members that want to do this new electronic
You'll have to deal with
attendance
palm trees in the background.
option,
we could probably.
electronic
handle it.
attendance option.
We
I don't know,
can't
this,
see you.
this is a pretty historic, significant matter, and I think we got the extra 2 weeks, we ought to take it. Especially if we're gonna have 2 members absent, and to me, it looks a little, even if they can attend by, video, I'd like to take a little more time.
I'm fine either way, I guess. I mean, I'm fine with the 8th or fine with the 22nd. Is there any other
Do you have an
comments?
opinion?
I wouldn't mind giving the staff direction on the 8th, and I don't think that requires a vote.
That's what I'm,
It does
But I
not.
would like to defer the vote on the resolution till the 22nd.
Let's do that then.
Okay,
All right,
Okay.
that's fine.
that's fine. That's fine.
See, what a great group this is.
Brent, anything else?
no, just that I had in my other job, we had a meeting on Vancouver's options on Initiative 502, and I guess I should have asked this to Mitch, but our moratorium's going to be expiring pretty soon. Do we have any plans to bring something forward?
Yes,
on medical marijuana and also to deal with I-502?
Yeah, Mitch is on it, and it's on our calendar to be back in time for the moratorium. He is not preparing an ordinance for consideration to implement 502. Still watching and waiting. But he has done legwork to be prepared to act quickly as some of the details come out of that watching and waiting. I believe you can expect a suggestion to extend the moratorium in the other context.
I'd like Don to review the legalities of that, because I think we might have some problems with multiple extensions of moratoria.
I don't know if is there a limit?
There's no absolute limit, but at some point it
We could be challenged potentially,
Yes.
is what you're saying, yeah.
I guess you don't need to do, that's basically what it says, and
Kind of
I'm
what I
just,
thought, yeah.
it just causes me some discomfort when you just, do, and,
You know, with the other circumstances that have come up with 502, I think it's,
Right. The rules for 502 are still in play. They're out for comment. They're currently being promulgated by the board, and that would be-
there's an issue of preemption of local zoning anyway, that if the board decides they will put a retail outlet in this location, that they can do that even if our city zoning code doesn't allow it. That's the position at least one of the Liquor Control Board members is taking. And so there have been adverse comments made about that from city governments. I don't know whether Washougal did, but I know another city that did. And so that's going to be a matter of some concern, I think, here.
Yeah, I think the AWC has been chasing that. Yep.
That's all I have.
Karen?
I just want to say we played in the Camas Washougal softball game Friday night, and it was a lot of fun. We lost by 1, but we're not sure if the record keepers were doing an adequate job. On a more
local to deal with the softball games.
And on a more serious note, the Parks Board meetings are typically every first Wednesday of every month here at City Hall, but next month in July, it's going to be on the 10th at Upper East Hathaway Park. They are converting the tennis courts to pickleball courts. So that might be a great thing to put in the post record. And I will look for a time on that meeting. I believe it's 4:30. So that's it.
Joyce?
Well, it's late, but I had told Charlie Dawson that she has an issue that I think you're aware of about the seasonal workers' retirement. So I just told her I'd bring it up, but I think that you're handling it, so there's really nothing more than just, I told Charlie I'd do that, so I can say I did that.
Correct, yes, we are working with the Department of Retirement Systems to find a solution to that.
Thank you.
No.
Dave? I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second?
We are in adjournment.
Didn't anybody want to discuss that?